Okay, so today we are going to continue with the chapter P, the prerequisite chapter. Today we are also going to continue on with section 4, so it'll be day 3. Today we're going to be factoring trinomials. The first thing we're going to look at are the trinomials when that leading coefficient, that A term, is equal to 1. So, and what I'm referring to is when your trinomial is in standard form, meaning it's in ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are going to be coefficients or constants. So here, the first examples we're going to do are when this number in front of x squared is going to equal a 1. These are the easy trinomials. So what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at the factors of the last term that will sum to the middle term. So if the last term is positive, then both signs must be the same, and they're going to match the middle term. So if that last term is positive, then the signs on your two factors will be the same, and it's going to be the sign of the middle. So if the middle term's positive, the two signs are positive. If that middle term is negative, they'll both be negative. If the last term is negative, then one of your factors will be positive and one will be negative. A little hint, the larger factor gets the sign of the middle term. So let's go ahead and take a look at our first trinomial. Notice the number in front of x squared. There isn't one, so it's assumed to be a 1. So what I need to do is I'm looking for the two factors that will sum to give me -7, but when I multiply them, give me the last term. So I'm looking for the factors of 12, two numbers that'll multiply to give me a 12, but who will add to give me a -7. So I'm going to start my list of factors of 12. Now notice it's a positive, and both of my factors need to be the same sign, and they're going to be the sign of the middle. So my factors here of 12, because they're both going to be the same and they're both going to be negative, -1 times -12, -2 times -6, and then -3 times -4. These are the factors of positive 12 that will give me a -7. So then now if I wanted to go back and add them, when I sum these two, it gives me -13. This is not the sum I'm looking for. I'm looking for a -7. This gives me -8. And this last one is the combination that I needed, because -3 times -4 gives me positive 12, and -3 plus -4 gives me -7. So my two factors now go into my binomials. So the first is the factors of the x squared, which are x and x, and then in this next spot are these two factors, the -3 and the -4. Once you come up with the two binomials, remember you can always multiply these back. If after you FOIL or multiply, if it doesn't go back to the original, you've done something wrong. So a quick check here, x times x is x squared. X times -4 is -4x. And then -3 times x is -3x. And then finally last, -3 times -4, positive 12. Again, when I combine the middles, it does give me the number I needed in the middle. Now, you can also do this by grouping if you choose. But again, when that number in front of x squared is a 1, just focus on that last number, looking for those factors that will combine to give you the middle term. Also, when you write your answer, if you prefer to write x minus 4 and then x minus 3, the order of your binomials doesn't matter. Now, when you're doing any kind of homework on WebAssign, read how they want you to input your answers. Sometimes they'll put the greater factor first, but I don't think it matters on this homework, but just read how they want you to input the answers. Everybody good here? All right, let's go on and do some more examples. So for the first one, it wants us to look for two numbers that are going to multiply to give me a 6, but who will add to give me the middle, which is 5. Now, I could be putting an X here, but again, it's just easier when it's the easy trinomials just to focus on the number part. So again, my factors of positive 6, that will give me a positive 5, that is a clue that when this number is positive, my signs are the same, and they both have the sign of the middle. So those factors are just going to be 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. Now I also have to add these two factors. So when I add these two, I get 7. Add these two, I get 5. So my magic combination here is the 2 and the 3, because 2 times 3 is 6 and 2 plus 3 is 5. So now I will set up my two binomials, and in it I put the factors of the x squared, which are x and x, and now I place the factors of the 6, which are going to be the 2 and the 3. So positive 2, positive 3. And again, it doesn't matter if you put the x plus 3 first and the x plus 2 second. Either way is acceptable. Number 2, this time my last term is negative 6. This is a clue that my two numbers, my two factors, must be opposite signs. One positive, one negative. Now, the sum, remember you can assume a negative 1 here. So a clue when you see something like this is whenever you're trying to get a 1 or a negative 1 for the middle term, that's a clue that your factors are going to be side by side. They're going to be consecutive. So I'm going to go ahead and make my list of the factors of negative 6. Now it's the same numbers that I just did in the problem before, but remember the signs have to be different. And the sign of the middle goes on the bigger factor. So again, my factors are 1 and 6 and 2 and 3, but the larger factor is going to be the negative because that's the sign of the middle. And then now, these are the products, which give me negative 6. But when I add these, I get negative 5 for the first one. And this one gives me the negative 1 that I need. So my two factors are going to be positive 2 and negative 3. And again, they'll go right into the binomial. So again, set it up with an x as the first, because this is the factors of the x squared. And then the two factors, the negative 3 and the positive 2. And again, you could put the positive 2 first. It doesn't matter. The next one, we are looking for factors of positive 8 that when I combine them, give me a negative 6. So two numbers to multiply to give me 8, who will also add to give me negative 6. So here, my factors need to be same signs, and they're both going to be negative because that's the sign of the middle. So negative 1 times negative 8 and negative 2 times negative 4. And of these factors list, the one that'll give me the negative 6 is going to be this one, because this will give me negative 9. So my two factors are going to be negative 2 and negative 4. So now I'll go ahead, set up my binomials, put an x and an x, and then put in the negative 2 and the negative 4. And again, remember, you can always FOIL. So remember, once you come up with the binomials, you can either distribute them back or use the acronym FOIL and FOIL them back. All right, so let's try example 4. Again, more of the same. The easy trinomials when the number in front of x squared is a 1. So So let's go ahead and take a look at number 4. So again, since this number in front of x squared is a 1, all I have to do is look at the factors of negative 24, two numbers that multiply to give me negative 24, but who will add to give me negative 5. Now 24 has more factors than what we've been seeing. So let's go ahead and make our list. So in order to get a negative number, I know my signs have to be different. One positive, one negative. So 1 and 24, and the bigger number gets the sign of the middle. And my middle number was negative, so the 24 is the negative. Then 2, I like to do an organized list. So 2 times 12, then 3 times 8, and then 4 times 6. And the bigger number in each one of these factors gets the negative sign because that's the sign of my middle. So now I'm going to go through and add all these until I find out which combination will give me a negative 5. So this first one gives me negative 23. When I add these two, I get negative 10. Oh, look at this one. It's going to be the 3 times negative 8, and this one is the negative 2. So the combination I need is the positive 3 and the negative 8, because positive 3 times negative 8 gives me negative 24, but when I add them, I get the negative 5. So we'll set up our two binomials, put an x and an x here for the factors of x squared, and then next I put in the factors of the negative 24, which is the positive 3 and the negative 8. And again, it doesn't matter if you write the negative 8 first and the positive 3 second. It doesn't matter. Next one. I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to give me a 1, but who will add to give me a 1? Well, in this case, the only factors of 1 are 1 times 1, and then 1 plus 1 gives you 2. So this cannot be factored. So if that were the case, you could either just put cannot factor, or you could rewrite the problem. A lot of times on an SAT, they would just tell you to rewrite the problem, okay? So if you get a question like this on WebAssign, read what they will ask you to input if it can't be factored. Sometimes some books use the word prime, but again, it cannot be factored. I am looking for two numbers that multiply to give me the last term, but who will add to give me the middle. So two numbers that add, same two numbers, to give me the negative 3. So because that last term is negative, my signs are going to be opposite, one positive, one negative. But remember, the bigger factor gets the sign of the middle. So my bigger factor will be negative. So let's make your list. So the factors are going to be 1 and 18, but the bigger factor is the 18, so it gets negative. 2 and 9, 3 and negative 6. And now I'm going to add them to see which one will give me a negative 3. So once I add these, it's going to be the last one, because this gives me negative 17. So it's the last one, the positive 3 and the negative 6. So again, I'll set up my binomials. I get an x and an x, and then in it, place those two factors, positive 3, negative 6. And again, the order doesn't matter. The next one, we are looking for two numbers that will multiply to give me positive 2, but who will add to give me positive 3. So this is nice and easy. The factors of 2 are just 1 times 2. And then when you add that, you're going to get 1 plus 2 is the 3. So those factors are just going to be x plus 1 and x plus 2. And again, remember, you can always FOIL it to double check your answers. When you take this quiz next week, I highly recommend that you multiply it back and FOIL it. All right, so For option 1, and this is when, again, our standard form, remember, is this ax squared plus bx plus c. It should always be in standard form when you're factoring the trinomials. Now remember, now we're going to be doing the harder trinomials where this number in front of x squared is not going to be a 1. It's going to be some other coefficient. So if you're using the trial and error method, you're going to list all of the factors of the first term and then list all of the factors of the last term until you can find the combination that will work together. So for example, when the numbers are kind of small, or even if they're prime and they don't have a lot of factors, trial and error may be faster than factor by grouping. So what we would be doing is listing the factors of 2x squared, and that's going to be 1x times 2x. And then the factors of negative 15 are going to be 1 and 15. And I got to do a negative here. Or it could be negative 1 and positive 15. Or it could be 3 and negative 5. Or negative 3, positive 5. This one has 4 factors. So now what I need to do is look through and figure out which one of the 4 is going to work with this one. And again, you would put them into binomials and then FOIL it to see which one goes back to the original. So let's go ahead and set it up. So I'm going to put in, and it doesn't matter where you put the x and the 2x. What's going to matter is where you're going to put one of these 4. So let me show you one where it's going to fail. So let me say I picked the first one, and I put in here 1 and negative 15. So let's say I try this one, and I'm going to FOIL it. So this gives me 2x squared. This gives me negative 15x. This gives me positive 2x. And this gives me negative 15. Really what you're doing is testing out this middle. See how I get a negative 13x? I was trying to get a 1x. So as soon as you see, if you're doing trial and error, that that one did not work, then you move on to the next one. Okay, the one that is going to work is going to be, I'll put in x here, and then I'll put a 3. So the one that's going to work is going to be this one, and then 2x and negative 5. So then what you would do is FOIL it. So first, 2x squared, outer, negative 5x, inside, positive 6x, and then finally last, negative 15. So once you combine this, you do get the 1x you were looking for, and it did go back to the original. Oh, wait. Yeah, that's right. I wanted to get a positive 1x. All right, so then that does go back to the original. So these are the factors that we needed. X plus 3 and 2x minus 5. So if that first term wouldn't have been a 2, if it would have been an 8, then you would have had a bunch of factors to go through, or even if it was a 24. So sometimes the trial and error could take you longer until you can figure out the ones that fit together. I'm going to show you option 2, which is going to be factor by grouping. This method never fails. And again, you're not having to do as many FOIL problems. So for this option, what we're going to do is we're going to multiply the first and the last term. So I'm going to multiply 2x times negative 15. And what I'm doing here is looking for two numbers that are going to multiply to give me negative 30x squared, but who will add to give me the 1x from the middle. So I'm going to start my organized list of the factors of negative 30x squared. Now, technically when you're listing these factors, because you're going to end up with a bunch of x's, you could just focus on the number part. But essentially what you should be doing here is going through, the sign should be opposite, and then the sign of the bigger number is the sign of the middle. So the middle was positive, so really it's a negative 1x times a 30x, or a negative 2x times a 15x, negative 3x times 5x, and that would be all your factors, because you're looking at the sign of the middle, which is positive, and my factor of the negative 30, the bigger factor gets the sign of the middle. Because when you multiply all these three I wrote down, they do give you the negative 30x squared. But now I'm going to add them to figure out which one is going to give me the middle. And I've missed one. Negative 5x times 6x. Because this is my combination that I needed. Because this one gives me 2x, this one gives me 13x, and this one gives me 29x. Yes, that is a mistake. This should be a 10. And then this, when I add it, is going to be 7. Everybody good on that? Thank you. All right. So negative 3 times 10 is negative 30, and then negative 3 plus 10 is 7. Perfect. So this is going to be my combination I need. Now, I can't put these numbers right into the binomials. I have to turn this trinomial into a 4-term polynomial now. Okay, so let me go ahead and write it down here. So I have 2x squared plus x minus 15. This is the problem. So I'm going to rewrite the first term. I'm now going to replace the middle term, this positive x, with these two factors. It doesn't matter how you put them in. You can choose. So if I go ahead and put in, let's say you think, I'd rather put the positive 6 first and then the negative 5. It's not going to matter. You're going to get the same answer either way. Now, this is what we learned on Friday. However, on Friday, what I gave you was the 4-term polynomial. You have to turn the trinomial into the 4-term polynomial in order to factor by grouping. So this was the same. And again, what I replaced the middle term with was the two factors you just found. Now I make my groups. So I got a group here, and then I'm going to make my other group in purple. So I'm looking for the greatest common factor of my red group, which is going to be 2x. Going to divide. Now remember, after you do this division, what ends up in the parentheses must match. So if I just try to pull a 5 out of this, I'm not going to get a match. So I'm actually going to factor out a negative 5 GCF, and then I get a match. So once you get the match, you write down that binomial, and then take the 2 GCFs you just divided by. And that becomes your second binomial. And again, always, if you have time, FOIL to check. All right, so for this one, again, I'm going to multiply my first term and my last term. So I'm looking for two numbers that are going to multiply to give me 6. Now, you could put 6x squared here, but really let's just focus on the numerical part. And then two numbers that are going to add to give you negative 5. So those factors of positive 6, that'll give you a negative. This is a clue that they both have to be negative. Now, technically what we should be doing here is 6x squared. So when we put them in here, the factors of positive 6 are going to be negative 1 times negative 6x, and negative 6 times negative 6x. And then here, negative 2x and negative 3x. So again, if you'd rather just do negative 1 times negative 6 and negative 2 times negative 3, just remember when you go to put it into the 4-term polynomial that they've got x's with them. So now when I add these, I get negative 7, and when I add this one, I get the negative 5 that I needed. So these are going to be my two factors that will replace the middle. So I'm replacing the -5 with these two factors I just found. So I rewrite the 2x squared. I'm replacing the middle with -2x and -3x, and then I just rewrite the last term. And now I'm going to make my two groups. Red group, let's see if there's a better, let me do white so it shows up better. So I'll make a white group, and see what's going to show up. Maybe orange. Okay, let me zoom in there. All right, so I'm looking for a greatest common factor of my white group, which is going to be 2x. Divide. And then orange group, again, I want it to look the same. So I'm going to pull out a -3. So then -3 is the GCF, and then divide. Not showing up very good, so let's do it, go over it in black. Okay, so now these two look the same. Write it down, and then put the two GCFs together. And again, the order doesn't matter. If you would have rather written 2x minus 3 first and x minus 1, that order doesn't matter. Okay, so for this one, again, multiply beginning and end. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to give me -54. That will add to give me -3. So signs need to be different. And again, the sign in the middle is the bigger factor. So 1 times 54, bigger factor is 54. And again, you could put it with the x's if you want, but it gets a little busy. And then 3 and -18, and then 6 and -9. So out of my combinations here, this one gives me -53, -25, -15, and this last one is the one that I need. So these two factors, it'll be a +6x and a -9x. That'll give me the 54x squared that I need, and then when I add them, I do get the -3x I need. So again, that's replacing here, and again, it doesn't matter how you put them in. So let me just show you. You would think that you'd want to put maybe the 6 first. Let's put the 9 first. It doesn't matter. You're going to get the same answer either way. So then I'll bring down my 2x squared and bring down my -27. So now what I'm going to do, again, make my groups. So I'll do a black group so it shows up better, and a green group. So my GCF of black is going to be just x. So if you would have put the 6 there, then it would have been a 2x GCF. But again, it doesn't matter. We're going to get the same answer either way. And then here, my GCF of green is going to be 3. So then +3, and you get the 2x minus 9 that you need. So take this, write it down, and then take the two GCFs. And you're done. And again, I highly recommend that you FOIL to check. It will save your answers, especially if you've placed the sign in the wrong spot. So again, we're gonna always, you should look for a greatest common factor. Now, none of these examples I can't divide any of them by GCF, so I'm gonna go right into my factor by grouping. So I'm gonna multiply, and this one's gonna get kind of big. I'm gonna do 8 times 18, and that's gonna give me 144. So I'm actually looking for two numbers that will multiply to give me 144, but who will add to get 51. All right, now I guess we could put the x and the x squared. Let's do that. So 144x squared. So let's start listing those factors. Now, notice they're both positive, so both signs in my factors are going to be positive. So 1 and 144, 2 and 72, and then 3 times 48. And this is going to be the combination I need. I don't need to go any further because 3 plus 48 gives me the 51. Now again, remember, these all have x's. So my two factors that are going to replace the 51 are going to be 3x and 48x. And again, it doesn't matter how you put them in. So if you want to put the 48 first and then the 3 second, doesn't matter. In the end, it all works out the same way. So rewrite the 18, rewrite the 8x squared. So now you're going to make your groups. Put parentheses around the first two terms and then parentheses around the last two. I'm looking for a greatest common factor between 8x squared and 48x, and that GCF is going to be 8x. I'm going to divide. And then now I'm looking for a GCF between 3 and 18, and that's going to be 3. Divide. And now notice what remained in the parenthesis was the same. So write the x plus 6 along with the two GCFs that you divided by for the second binomial. So x plus 6 in the first binomial and 8x plus 3. Again, you could put the 8x plus 3 first and the x plus 6 second. Now, the next one. Just moving forward for chapters later on when we're looking for x-intercepts or looking for zeros or looking for the roots, you always want to try to keep your x squared term positive. So what we're going to do is divide all of these by a -1. We're going to factor out a GCF of -1 to begin with. So essentially flip all the signs to opposite. And now you're going to factor the trinomial that remains. Now, in factored form, you still need to include that -1 in your answer. WebAssign will probably let you just put a negative sign in front. So now, what I'm going to do now is multiply the first and the last. I'm looking for two numbers that are going to multiply to give me -18x squared, but who will add to give me -17x. So if I start my list, I'm going to do, I need different signs. Sign of the bigger factor is going to be the negative. So right away, I've got my combination I need, because +1 times -18 gives me the -18, but when I add it, I get the -17. So again, I'm replacing this with the two factors I just found. And again, the order you place them doesn't matter. So don't forget about this -1 out front. Rewrite the first term, the 6x squared. I'm replacing that middle with the two factors I just found. And then rewrite this last term, -3. All right, now I factor by grouping. So I'll go ahead and make my first group here. I'll do it in green. And does the blue show up? Not really. I'll do yellow. Okay, so my green group, my GCF is going to be 6x. We're going to write the -1 down there. Keep bringing that GCF down. So the GCF is now 6x after you divide x minus 3. My GCF of the yellow, notice the only GCF here is a 1. You have to write that GCF of 1. So put +1, then divide. And notice you've got the match. So you'll write that down in your first binomial, x minus 3, and then take the two GCFs. Now you don't need to put brackets like I did. Instead, I would just do a negative sign x minus 3, 6x plus 1. This is how WebAssign will probably expect you to put your answer in. You don't need to include the bracket. So that is factoring trinomials, the easy trinomials when your a term equals 1, and the more challenging when your a value is not equal to 1.